we continue the conditions, means preparation for the gathering of the materials. That's what we are doing, is it not? We are about a certain length and through the preparation for the beginning of change of nature. That's the change of the foundation. Before we come to the changing of the foundation, we have to gather some of the materials. And we are dealing with the process of surrender, I think. And surrender itself, the process of surrender itself is tapasya. Tapasya means, self-effort, one's own personal effort at realizing a truth with a concentration of the whole consciousness is called tapasya. Tapasya in Greek would be ascesis. That is to say, putting the force of will on a certain objective. You see? And not only so, but in fact, a double process of tapasya and increasing surrender persists for a long time, even when the surrender has fairly well begun. When one has made an effort to surrender to the divine, and the effort is sincere and successful, it does not obviate the necessity of personal effort. The personal effort still has to remain. But a time comes when one feels the presence and the force constantly and more feels that it is doing everything. Slowly, the transfer is slow from the personal nature or personal effort the to the charge of the power that can handle the whole inner and outer life of the aspirant. You see. It is not possible to get rid of stress of personal effort at once. To give up personal effort at once is not possible and not always desirable. It's not desirable to stop all personal effort. There are people who have a mental idea that God does everything, and so now I give up all charge of my work to God. And then they don't want to be responsible for anything that happens and take up decisions. So they say that now everything is in the hand of God. Now, in one sense, it is true. But in order that this may become real and concrete to the whole nature, the transfer is slow and gradual. It cannot be by merely taking up a mental action or mental decision. It is not even desirable because it is better than tamasic inertia. To make personal effort is better than to sink into inertia and do nothing. While theoretically holding that the divine will do everything or does everything or is responsible for everything, and that one is not responsible. That is the logic under which one wants to hide his own inertia, inability, or unwillingness to undertake the effort of opening the being to the higher influence. This is very common mistake, but he is guarding the disciple in his letter against this mistake, which is current, fairly current. When once the some part of the being is awakened to the necessity of divine consciousness and its attainment, one generally has a mental attitude that now all I want to give up to the divine. Now that is a mental decision and at best or at most a mental surrender. The surrender has not become complete throughout and actual, so to say. It's an idea that is somewhere in the mind. And to proceed as if one had succeeded in making the surrender and taking all the corollaries out of it would be a mistake. That is what he is pointing out, that personal effort is necessary and desirable and one should not give it up. It is not desire in the early stages of sadhana to leave everything to the divine or expect everything from the divine without the need of one's own endeavor. You see, it is a sort of a idleness or passivity or inactivity or desire not to act that is responsible for this attitude. That is only possible, means giving up the whole burden of sadhana to the divine is only possible when the psychic being is in front. The inner soul has taken charge of nature and influencing the whole action. When psychic being is able to mold mind and emotion and vital being, And even then, vigilance and constant assent are necessary. Even when the psychic is active, one has to be vigilant, watchful, careful, and constant assent to the leading of the psychic being in preference to mental idea or vital liking and disliking or attachment and so on. One has to be going on giving the assent also. Or else, later on in the ultimate stages of yoga, when a direct or almost direct supramental force is taking up the consciousness, then you can give up, not before that. A complete surrender is not possible in so short a time. Somebody must have written that I have now made complete surrender. So he is warning him by giving him a sort of an advice that a complete surrender is not possible in so short a time. For a complete surrender means to cut the knot of the ego in each part, not in one part, in each part of the being, and offer it free and whole to the divine. After getting rid of the ego, that pure personality or pure part that remains, well, that has to be offered to the divine. The mind, the vital being, the physical consciousness, and even each part of these in all its movement have one after another to surrender separately. Now that gives you clear idea of, you see, the detail of surrender. That is not merely giving of idea or giving of opinion or mental preference or giving up of some movement of emotion or movement of attachment or a desire. You see, but giving up one to the other, it's like that. You see, coming down to the whole ladder of one's consciousness, the mind, the vital being, the physical consciousness. And each part of these have one after another to surrender separately. What one does in the beginning is there is a general idea of surrender or an ideal of surrender or mental idea of surrender or some emotional feeling of surrender, a feeling that one surrenders. But that is mainly done by the emotional part. The other parts hardly participate. In fact, the vital is hardly conscious that some part is surrendering. The vital simply keeps all itself intact unless one is, conscious of the vital being. Otherwise, the vital being keeps all itself intact, even when the emotion is surrendering and even the mind is enlightened a little and understand that surrender might be a very necessary stage. The vital being simply goes on reserving its own place to its own self and doesn't even want to become conscious of any necessity of surrender. This is a great, truth which people who even do yoga don't understand very often. They think that I have made a resolution of surrender. Sharunda would ask, where? Yes, you can make a resolution of surrender in mind, while your vital being may not know anything about it. You may make a surrender in the heart, and either the physical being or the mental being may not know anything about it or may not consent to it. So that is why he is pointing out to the disciple the mind, the vital, the physical consciousness, even each part in all its movement have one after another to surrender separately and to give up their own ways and accept the way of the divine in each part of nature. Now that becomes a pretty long and arduous work. But that is sadhana, and when you're doing it for an unselfish purpose, then there is no disappointment in it. You see, failure means only a necessity to try again. It's not failure which is given permanently to the being. The core of the inner surrender is trust and confidence in the divine. Why do you surrender and give yourself up to the divine? Because you trust that by giving up, you get the maximum spiritual benefit, or you get the best chance of fulfilling the divine will in yourself, or fulfilling one's own existence. One takes the attitude, this is how he describes the attitude. Now, this will give you an idea of how the being takes an attitude of surrender. In surrender, what do you do generally? He describes. One takes this attitude, I want the divine and nothing else. That's one. I want to give myself entirely to Him. And since my soul wants that, it cannot but be that I shall meet and realize Him. This attitude of surrender is proceeding. I am asking nothing but that, and His action in me to bring me to Him. His action secret or open, veiled or manifest. I do not insist on my own time and way, which very often the sadhaks do. I do not insist on my own time and way. Let him do all in his own time and way. I shall believe in him, accept his will, aspire steadily for his light and presence and joy, and go through all difficulties and delays, relying on him and never giving up. Let my mind be quiet. This is how one takes the attitude of aspiration and surrender. You see? Let my mind be quiet and trust him and let him open it to his life. Let my vital be quiet and turn to him alone and let him open it to his calm and joy. All for him and myself for him. Whatever happens, I will keep to this aspiration and self giving and go on in perfect reliance that it will be done. Well, that gives you some detailed idea of the attitude which one takes when one makes a effort at surrender or an aspiration in sadhana. You see? That's the attitude, and it is, I think, a detailed work which he has given here. Take up now the general equipment we have, taken note of. Now, in the foundation, I would like to make one point clear a little bit. You see, this is a lower nature. You call it lower nature for the sake of convenience. It's with the present human nature. You call it lower nature. Now, here are its foundations. You see, it is really a triangle, but I roughly put it down. You see, ego. You call it desire here. Then mental. You see, mental ignorance, and so on. Put it like that. This is the foundation. Now there is a higher nature here. Higher nature or divine nature. Now there is, a world of perfect nature. Higher nature is perfect. This is imperfect. Now this is to come down here. Then it requires a foundation to be changed. So you give up this foundation and in its place, now what do you establish? You see, from there, you require calm. You require equanimity. You require detachment. You require peace. Well, one by one, now all that is coming down is really, the proper, the qualities or powers of the higher nature. Powers of the higher nature. When you get calm or quiet, it is not as if your mind was becoming calm, but a power of the higher consciousness or nature was descending into you. You understand? It is establishment of now this has to be replaced. And here a new foundation has to be made. And in that foundation, the higher power has to be installed, so to say, has to find its place. So you try to bring the powers of the higher consciousness of higher being or the divine consciousness into the present constitution of man. You see, there is a high foundation in the higher nature, and that foundation is to be brought down here. Now, how is it to be brought down? First, by removing the present basis of man's nature, by equipping all the material attitude, fearlessness, sincerity, and necessity of making it a first priority of life. Those things must be there. If they are not there, then it is difficult to change the foundations. Well, when you have got the equipment, that a resolution or a sincere aspiration that no, this is a task worth doing, and not only that, the first thing you would like to do, and everything else secondary, fear and difficulties you are prepared to meet, faith, sincerity, surrender, all this that you have considered up till now, they are the equipment to change the foundations. Now, when you change the foundation, then something from the higher nature is coming down. So, what is coming down when one gets peace? Generally, people think it is my peace. It's not true. It's a quality and power of the supreme consciousness. You are first getting the touch of the higher power. You understand? Most people don't understand when they get some contact of the higher consciousness as to what it means. They think it's my mind has become, capable of creating peace where it was not. It's not true. Peace always comes down. You cannot create peace. It is there somewhere. That's why you get. You understand? And where it is the power of the divine. The first contact of it takes the form of quiet. If the quiet is not there, the other greater things, illumination, knowledge, power, delight, consciousness, those cannot come down. You understand? This logic is very simple from the practical point of view. If you use yourself in philosophical argument, it's another. But absolutely from the practical point of view, it's very simple to understand that if divine has a perfect nature, divine is not without his perfection. Now, perfection of the divine consists in his divine qualities and divine powers. The divine powers, all of a sudden, are not to be acquired by man as extraordinary, miraculous attainments. They have to become established on a firm foundation. And the highest powers of the divine are powers of knowledge, powers of right will, powers of harmony, powers of joy, powers of delight. Now, this the human being cannot bear. If comes down now, where it will be superimposed? On his desire, on his ego. That is what has happened up till now. Don't you see the process of practical thing is very simple. Up till now, there has been something, but it has never been able to replace these foundations. And so long as they are not replaced, so nothing permanent exists here. If that has to establish its base here, the foundation must be given to it. And the present foundation must be removed. Till now, what they did was that when the contact was there, identification was there, when the merging was there, then some percolation of rays or illumination came down. Some influence happened. But the basis was not changed. You see, the foundations remained as they were. Now, what he is asking present aspirants or present humanity is that the necessity to now to meet the requirement of present situation is that it must be made a permanent part of man's consciousness. There must be first a permanent ascent, a station in the higher consciousness, and bringing down the powers or power qualities of the higher consciousness into lower nature. And they cannot be brought down unless the present basis is removed. And when you get the quiet and the peace, it is the first contact of the higher power. It is the force of the mother that is coming to you in the form of peace, because she wants to establish a quiet and peace form so that she may be able to change your whole life. She cannot do anything else if the peace is not there. That is why establishment of quietness and peace is a comfort, very distant contact of the higher consciousness. You see, if you have a cloud of darkness and sunlight, the first point at which the darkness is touching the light is where it says, "You please give me quiet and peace." Then the rest of my can come down. You see? So when peace comes, one should be happy. That it is not that he is acquiring some extraordinary power of which he can be, possessor, but that a higher consciousness is moving towards him, or he is now really effectively opening to some higher consciousness. Well, that is how one has to look at this problem, and it's a question of changing the foundation of human nature. You see, that is really the task. Attainment of God is not only merging into a higher consciousness, you know, oblivious of a necessity of change of nature. It is a question, the problem is to how to bring down the light of the divine, the harmony of the divine, the power of the divine into oneself to govern inner and outer life. That is the problem. And there he is pointing out that establishing the foundation is a necessity. And in the foundation, it is not possible to make a foundation in yoga if the mind is restless. So you see, that is the first condition is put down. That is, the mind is restless. No foundation in yoga can be done. The first thing needed is quiet in the mind. To merge the personal consciousness is not the first aim of yoga. The first aim is to open the human consciousness to a higher spiritual consciousness. First aim is not to merge, but to open to a higher consciousness. And for that also, quiet mind is the first need. So the first necessary foundation is a quiet mind. Then somebody says, but in life something, yes. That is exactly where sadhana will be pertinent to life. That something happens which disturbs your quiet. It is then that you have to be on your guard and consciously put down the quiet again and again. If one part gets disturbed, you get into a undisturbed other part. Supposing your vital get disturbed, desire personality. Then you get into your mind where it's easy to remain quiet, you see, and watch your own desire as if it was a child or some stupid man who is getting unnecessarily disturbed, and one who is watching him is quite in self possession and quiet. That quiet can be then forced upon the vital being. It is quite possible. If the mind is disturbed, for instance, then you can go into your emotional heart, the conscience, and keep the conscience quiet. That if your mind is disturbed, well, I would take the help of the divine and put the mind in again in a quiet condition. Well, from that it would be possible to extend the realm of calm and quiet to the mental being. You see, well, it is there that the real test of sadhana comes. That is, the real effort of sadhana is also meditation, but even over and above and outside the field of meditation, in life, it is these factors which are necessary to establish and give to the higher consciousness a firm foundation in oneself so that the higher work can get established. That the first foundation is the quiet mind. Especially in the beginning, the one great necessity is to get the mind quiet. Reject at the time of meditation at least the thought and movements that are foreign to sadhana, to spiritual aim. But you must not become impatient when suddenly peace does not come or calm quiet does not establish. Well, one gets more disturbed. This is very often the result. You see, the more he is not able to quiet his mind, the more the mind becomes disturbed. And he says, "Oh, I'm not able to quiet my mind." That itself becomes a point of disturbance further and further. That's why it is when one is impatient, you see. Well, if one has made a very sincere effort and concentration for quiet, and the best is to trust that it will come in spite of disturbance. Best is to remain, the disturbance is there already, so don't add to it by becoming impatient. You see, the point is that one always adds something to it by getting more impatient. Or, but you must not become impatient if all is not done at once. If everything does not get done at once, don't be impatient. It takes time to bring entire quiet into mind, and you have to go on till the consciousness is ready. Must say that perhaps some part is not ready, so must go on doing it. See, that is what he gave in the last, material to be prepared. That you must say that it is not in my time, in my way, but in the divine's time and in the divine's way one is ready to take the results, you see, of one's sadhana or effort. And the first step is a quiet mind, and silence then would be a further stage. From the quiet mind, you can move to the silent. The difference between them is people, when they think of quiet mind, is that in the quiet mind there would be no thought. That is not true. It is not that there would be no thought. There would be no disturbance. A quiet mind can act quietly. You see? Yes. Uh, Silent mind is another condition. Quietness is a state of mind in which there takes place no disturbance, agitation, upsetting of the being, or a sort of a haste to get things and so on. When one is quiet, the quiet can act, quiet can work. It is not quiet, is inactivity. Don't mix up the condition of quiet mind with inactivity, incapacity, or absence of movement. No. On the basis of the quiet, the movement takes place. That is the condition. That there is no agitation, there is no disturbance, there is no impatience and upsetting. He is describing by a quiet mind, I mean, he's explaining. You see, no teacher has so much patience and so detailed thinking. By a quiet mind, I mean a mental consciousness within which sees the thoughts arrive to it, sees that thought has come, arrive to it, and move about, but does not itself feel that it is itself thinking. It says a thought has come, like somebody coming from outside. When somebody has come from outside, that he has arrived and he is going, or but it is not itself thinking or identifying itself with the thoughts or call them its own. When a thought comes, it says it is arriving, it comes. It says thought is coming. And sees the thought arrive and doesn't identify itself or accept it as its own. Thoughts, mental movements may pass through quiet mind as wayfarers appear and pass from elsewhere through a silent country. You can't have a more practical description of what a quiet mind is. When the mind is quiet and at peace, what is the first advantage? First is that the force can work more easily. The higher force can work more easily. It establishes the quiet and helps the sadhak to establish the quiet so that it may be able to work more easily. If there is disturbance, the higher consciousness cannot work easily. What is to be done to maintain this quiet or maintain this peace? But what the aspirant has to do is to become careful to reject and to hush the outsiders. If the outsiders come, thoughts, well, he has to reject and ask them to go out or to quiet them down, put them out. To reject and hush the outsiders so that during meditation at least the peace and quietude of mind and vital may be complete. During that time, one process which he described very funny, I think it's quite effective, that when you enter the meditation hall, you are having some thoughts. So when you open the door, you say, near the door there is an umbrella stand, there is a hat stand, is it not? You say, now you be here. You say, you be here. I'll pick you up when I come back. You say, I'll pick you up when I come back. You say, you remain here, please. I'm not going to take you with inside. You remain here. And you put it out and go in. Well, probably that is more effective sometimes. This can be done, but if you keep a strong and silent will, then only it can be done. That will is the will of the Purusha in you, the subjective consciousness behind the mind. You keep a will that there must be, the outsiders must be silenced, and during meditation, no disturbance or no foreigner should come into mind and vital being. For that, one can maintain a quiet will, and that will, he says, is the will of the Purusha, who is the witness self behind the mind. When the mind is at peace and when it is silent, one can become aware of this silent self, this witness Purusha, the separate from the action of nature. Then one knows and feels an identification with a being that is watching the whole movement and flow of nature within oneself. That is the being becoming conscious of the witness self, the Purusha consciousness, you see. It is a part of nature that the dichotomy takes place in the mind or in the emotion or in the vital being, wherever one happens to be stationed in consciousness. And then one part separates itself from the flow of energy of nature, movement of nature, and only watches it. That is the beginning of complete separation from the whole of nature, really speaking. And not only that, complete separation from the whole of the cosmos. That Purusha is the Purusha that is watching the whole cosmos, universe. But here one becomes conscious on his personal station of his existence and his working. You see, it begins by the one's own self, but as one develops, one knows that this is not only the witness of one nature; it's a witness of the whole cosmic movement, and it is a silent witness self, infinite in being, consciousness, and delight, watching the whole procession or flow of the universal movement. It's not merely from a witness of one nature, you see, or one's own nature. But the beginning is to be done slowly as Gita puts these steps one by one. The witness self, in the consenter or the one who gives the consent, then one who supports, then one who enjoys, and one who rules. See, Sakshi, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta, Ishvara. You see, that is the ladder of realization of the higher and higher status of the witness or seer Purusha, the subjective consciousness that watches the flow of nature detached, completely free. Its greatest power are two: freedom and detachment. You see? It never is bound by the imperfection of nature, it never involved in nature, and therefore it can bring its force of will to bear upon the flow of nature. And because it is detached, it is not influenced by whatever is the condition of nature. That is why no man can be permanently considered unfit for higher life, because you never know. The Purusha has all the infinite power of the Supreme in him, and anytime it can become active. To detach oneself, to stand back from them, and to feel them separate from oneself is indispensable. All the movements of mind, movements of emotion, or movements of life, desire, suggestions, ideas, thoughts, mechanical movements, suggestions going around like a telephone, machine operating cut, all the time cut. It's all the time flowing and doing like that. Well, that is what the mechanical part of the mind is doing. So the point is not to try to stop and to say why. No, detach yourself and say, oh, it's only mechanical. Then it will lose its force. To detach oneself and to stand back. See, the remedy he suggests is very practical, and more effective remedy is this one, rather than try to stop at once. When you detach, you will be able to stop more effectively. You see, because the will be able to act because the will is not involved in it. You see, will is free. Will of the Purusha. You see, detach from feel them separate from oneself. That is indispensable. Meanwhile, if it doesn't happen, wait. It's a long list of what you must do. You see. Meanwhile, wait. Open yourself upwards. Call very quietly and steadily, not with a too restless eagerness. Call for the peace to come into the silence. And once the peace is there, then call for the joy and the presence of the divine. Yes. So many people have this difficulty of understanding what is opening, you see. It is a question of trial, then one finds out it's not so difficult. It is only when the mind, when you try to revolve the idea and then understand and so on, then you find what is opening to the higher consciousness and so on. But very simply, if you take an instance from ordinary life, supposing you have invited the President of America to your house, what would you do? Well, then you make all preparations for it, is it not? And then you keep everything in a tip-top condition if you can. I mean, that would be the first preliminary. And you keep all the doors open. You see, most probably you stand at the gate expectantly. You see, in an expectant mood. You see, that's opening. That's all. That's the opening. That's the way one has to do with the higher consciousness. And that's why I gave you the instance of Tagore in one talk, if you remember. That Tagore in one of his poems in Gitanjali says that you see, I am in my chamber of heart and sitting quiet on my sofa lying down, and my door is closed. The chamber of my heart is closed. And I know that you are standing out, and I'm a bit idle and unwilling to get up, and I think that perhaps you will just push the door and come in. Which there could be no, happier, I mean, condition than that. But I know that you will not push the door. I know I will have to get up and myself open the door and with joy and willingness and happiness welcome you, then only you will come, not otherwise. You see, well, that is the opening, you see. Opening of consciousness is the turning of main part. It may be mind, it may be emotional being heart, it may be vital being the willpower, or it may be two, or it may be all the three. It's quite possible to open the whole being, I mean, the chief psychological functioning of human nature, to an opening to receive something higher and greater than what man has known, or whatever truth or idea of reality or concept of the truth consciousness or higher consciousness or reality or omnipresent God or Shakti or power or mother. Yes, you open to that. That's all. Keep your consciousness open to it. Well, then it will be able to influence. That is the idea. You see, it is a if there is a see if there is a hot object somewhere, and if you are not so completely protected from heat, then you will feel the hot vibration. You will feel better if something in you becomes open to the heat vibration, more easily receptive. Supposing a copper metal is there, it will take the heat more quickly than a stone. And a stone vessel won't take heat quickly. Well, the copper vessel or copper metal has got the opening, you see, to the vibration. Yeah, that's it. It is allowing the higher consciousness to influence one's consciousness, mind, or emotional being, or vital being, or in the way in which one wants it to be influenced. One can open it with a prayer or with an aspiration for peace, calm, purity, equanimity, detachment, surrender, anything. But it is to be done with the help of the higher power. What he is seeking is not he wants to become somebody, but he wants to open to a higher consciousness to give it a basis, give it a foundation. Because it's a permanent work to be done. This is not a passing condition, a special spiritual condition in one can remain very happy and thinking that he is far better than all the world. That's not the situation. Situation is to establish the higher consciousness in the present constitution of man. In reality, calm is not a negative thing. Many people think that to remain calm is not what positive thing can take place in your choir. Calm is not a negative thing. It is the very nature of the true being, the Purusha. You see, cosmic Purusha, the true being, its very nature is calm and the positive foundation of divine consciousness. If divine consciousness is to come down, the positive foundation is peace, quiet. If the quiet is not there, the foundation cannot be laid. Purity is another necessity, you see. Purity is to accept no other influence but only the influence of the divine. And people have an idea, there is a distinction between holiness and purity. You see. In holiness, you have no need for purity because it is an emanation of purity, perhaps, when there is holiness, you see. That is a quality of the divine, really speaking, and of which the human representation is purity. Something holy is not only itself pure, but is a power of purification of others. See, they will say in Indian tradition, for instance, the fire is a purifying element. in the sense that not only itself is pure, but it can purify anything else. There is a mental peace, there is a vital peace, and there is a peace of the physical nature. So you see, the calm and peace is not to be established only in one part of nature, but has to pervade slowly all the instruments of our consciousness. Peace in the mind, peace of the physical nature, peace of the vital nature. It is a peace of the higher consciousness that descends from above, really speaking. What you get in the mind, what you get in the vital or the physical consciousness is an influence of the higher consciousness coming down. That is its great symbolic significance. It is just the beginning of the contact of the higher consciousness, you see. And if it can be permanent, the contact also will become permanent. To feel the peace above and about your head, perhaps, is the first step. Generally, when you sit down and meditate quietly and be truly conscious, of course, suddenly you may feel the peace within you as if it was there somehow. But if you watch the process, you will see that peace is something that comes down from above. It descends into the being, you see. For that, one has to be very quiet and calm. Otherwise, in the active condition, one doesn't notice the descent, you see. If one is only very quiet and, not too much active, then one notes that the peace is established by a flow from above. It's a percolation, it's a descent from above. It is as it were like rain, you see, it's coming down from above. That is how the peace descends. And is above and around your head is the first step. You have to get connected with that peace, and it must descend into you and fill your mind, fill your vital being, and fill your body, and surround you so that you live in the peace. And once you have it, the rest will begin to come. Now, that is a characteristic you have to try to experience if you get first the establishment of peace in the mind or somewhere. If you can surround yourself with the peace, then wherever you move, you always have a sort of a belt, so to say, a belt of peace. And anything that comes is first shock. The shock is there first. Shock is not here somewhere. Shock is there outside. And well, if it begins to disturb the peace, you know that, oh, you have to meet it rather there and then here. And before it penetrates into mind or vital or emotional being, you are able to meet it with the envelope of peace which you can establish around you once it is established within. Once it is established inside, it can become an envelope, you see, so that you may be going anywhere, but you're always with an aura or envelope of peace. And that does not get easily disturbed, or anything that comes is first received there, because the peace first will be disturbed there. And you will know that yes, this is now beginning of disturbance. So either you meet it there, or you avoid the contact, or you work it out at a distance rather. The same thing happens in other parts of our active movement. Very often the disease is not inside, but it comes from outside. You see, and if the nervous envelope is sensitive, it can feel the disease before it enters the body. The vibration of disturbance is felt outside, and if one has the consciousness and help of a great spiritual personality or faith in God, he can meet it there at the edge, so to say, at the envelope, and not allow it to penetrate, because once it penetrates, it takes more time to try and throw it out. You see, very often you can see that the headache is not in the head, but is trying to come to the head, or the cold is not there in the system, but cold is trying to come, and you can throw it out. You can throw it out before it comes, you see. One is to be conscious and try to find out that is exactly the process how things come into the physical being, through the vital, subtle nervous envelope, you see. Through that envelope they enter. And one has to keep that envelope intact and conscious so as to, well, keep things out. But for the peace, it is a psychological condition. There, it can be an envelope which you can always feel surrounded by, and all the time see that that is maintained. Well, when that is maintained, the inner condition also will be maintained, whatever that condition may be. Contact with the higher consciousness, or respiration, or surrender, or movement of deciding what to do and what not to do. All that will be taking place within the envelope of peace, and then things will become comparatively easy. To get peace, what is the method? Somebody seems to have asked him. There is no method other than aspiration. You must aspire for the peace. A strong and quiet will and a rejection of all that is turned towards, all that is not turned towards the divine in oneself. How to get at this peace? How to ask for this peace? And the first condition is aspiration, a strong will and a quiet will, and rejecting of all the element that is against the divine in oneself. Then the peace will come much more easily. Peace is necessary for all, for without peace and increasing purity, even if one opens, one cannot receive perfectly all that comes down through the opening. Supposing one part is open and higher influence comes down. If there is no peace and purity, it cannot be retained. So, full growth of spiritual consciousness or advantage of it in spiritual life is lost to one if peace and purity are not established, or one does not insist all the time on peace and purity. That's why when one does something and upset, the first thing must say, well, you see, somebody lost money. I'll tell you how it happened. Lost money. So, and that was I see, money is not important. So first, to be quiet when money is lost is more important than money that is lost. So sit down and say, well, I will be quiet first. Then, now, yes, this has come. Then you know also what to do better. Remember, otherwise, in that this condition, you do things which simply make you do more and more work and less result. You don't get also any result. The more important part is to maintain peace and quiet is much more important than to attend to what has happened to disturb you. This is even an accident has happened. If you get like that, you do something which you, oh, I should have rather done that. See, so first you say, it has happened. All right, I want to be quiet. Let me be. Then now what is to be done? In that quiet, perhaps the idea or suggestion that comes will be very correct of what should be done. Because that peace itself is such a powerful thing that it does not allow, vital beings and vital forces to guide you. Something from inside only will come and tell you what must be done, and that will be the best under the condition. The more upset you get, well, the more chance of getting more and more upset. Peace is necessary for all, for without peace and increasing purity, even if one opens, one cannot receive perfectly. A part may be open and receive something, but if there is no peace and purity, he will not, he will misuse it also. That is what happens to many Hatha yogis, many Raj yogis. They get some opening by a strong effort in the vital opening somehow, and something comes down. Then they don't know what to do with it because they have never understood. You see, it is like a man who says, I will cross the Sahara Desert. Then, if you say, but you might get lost, say, no, I will come back. Supposing I lose my way, I will come back from where I start. He doesn't know what he's in for. See, because once you get there, even if you put your trail, everything will be lost. You see, the winds are too strong and sand dunes go on forming and reforming, and you can never come back unless you are sincere and only wanting for the truth. Because I have opened and great power has come, what? You don't Now what you talk is normal, under normal condition. Then when the other powers come, you will not be what you are now. You forget. You cannot come back. It is Sahara. And Sahara has caught you in the midst, and then, well, there you are, in the midst of the desert. That's all. I have seen people cannot, very good people, they are not, when they start, they are not, charlatans. But when that comes, something comes up, and they become unimaginable. You can't imagine that man could have become what he actually becomes. Actually, then when he gets something, an opening, and he has not prepared himself, he is not pure or purified his being, and simply got some power by concentrating and some mantra or some process, and suddenly some opening, something has come, and then he doesn't know what to do with it. He is not himself afterwards. You see, it is that which is coming into him. And he thinks, now this is the highest thing. And he goes on doing, I am avatar, I am God, I can do this, I can cure disease, or I can. He does so many mistakes. He himself doesn't know what he's doing, you see. And he can't back to normality easily because which power is there all the time. He is open to it now. What is to be done? That's why he is giving the necessity of the foundation. You found yourself. Faith, sincerity, aspiration, surrender. First line of defense is there. Then there is peace, equanimity, and purity. Then the second line of foundation. What you want is a permanent change of consciousness and a divine working. There is no personal gain and no great advantage and no great superiority to anybody else to be attained. This is a work to be done for fulfilling one's inmost aspiration, which is the birthright of everybody. Everybody has to fulfill himself, and all people, all human beings are potentially divine. So there is no question of, backward and forward. It's a question of all realizing the ultimate truth and fulfilling themselves into it. Now, here, you cannot receive perfectly all that comes down through the opening. I know half a dozen cases at least, not only of Hatha Yogis, but even of this yoga, that when the opening is there, in one part is very sincere opening, so something comes down, and in another part there is a complete darkness, and now between the two there is such a pull and push that either you allow the psychic being to come in front and take 15 or 20 years to purify the being, or you stop yoga for some time, 1 year or 6 months at least, to get back to normal condition if you can, or you completely lose your head. That's all. Unbalanced. Because you see, the tension is too great between two parts, one part that doesn't open and part that is open. And from the higher point of view, there is no human values of man and this and that. These are all moral values. And in the spiritual world, it's only a play of forces. There is no good, bad, or why and wherefore. There is only force. And the force, well, two forces are at loggerhead. The higher force won't give up, neither the lower. So between the two, the human is torn, you see. The higher, because there is opening, the higher is constantly called in. The man calls him. So the higher is all the time there. The lower doesn't want to give up. It is all the time there. So the human is like that between the two. And it is very disastrous for the human psychology because it upsets completely the being. It is a tragedy, but one is very sincere and like child, it is all right, safe. But to be child is not so easy. Yes, people say and talk like that, but to be child is very difficult to have that simple faith and no other motive and egoism and personal sentiments and likes and dislikes and so. Peace and purity must be got as the foundation of the consciousness, otherwise, there is no firm standing ground for the divine play. The divine play cannot take place unless the foundation is laid down. Remain quiet, open yourself, and call the divine Shakti, means divine power, to confirm the calm and confirm the peace, to widen the consciousness and to bring into it as much light and power as it can at present receive and assimilate. There are periods where one opens and gets some progress and realization of the power. Then for 1 month, 2 months, or 6 months, nothing happens. and then one is discouraged. Well, that is very often a period of assimilation because that which has come, well, has to be normalized and one has to assimilate it. You see, one cannot, a human being cannot constantly uh, digest and assimilate everything that comes as it comes. Well, it has to become acclimatized and to assimilate it, make it a part of nature. You see, establishes the foundation. It is not as going on doing it won't do because it is too much sometimes, and the nervous being is tension is there and one is flat afterwards. Or the vital being revolts and then one has to wait till the vital is put in order and controlled. Or the mind gets disturbed by the physical, questioning and doubts like that. Remain quiet, open yourself and call the divine Shakti to confirm the calm and peace, to widen the consciousness, to bring into the consciousness as much light and power as it can at present receive and assimilate. Another element which is necessary is equality. Equality is power to meet all contexts without being disturbed. Maintenance of a fundamental, attitude of undisturbed state of mind, heart, and vital being. That is equanimity. Equality also, it is called equality. Samatha is a Sanskrit word. Samatha, equality means a quiet and unmoved mind, quiet and unmoved vital. It means not to be touched or disturbed by things that happen, not to be disturbed or touched by things that happen, or things said, not to be touched by things that are said, done to you, not to be touched by anything done to you, but to look at them with a straight look, free from distortion created by personal feeling. Very simple, but very difficult. This is the test of one's having done the samatha, yes. Equality means a quiet and unmoved mind and vital being. It means not to be touched or disturbed by things that happen to you, things that are said to you, things that are done to you, but to look at them with a straight look, free from distortion. Because when personal reaction comes, it is always distortion. Distortion created by personal feeling. And to try to understand what is behind them. To understand what is behind this. Somebody says something that you don't like. So then you try to take it in a detached way, not have a personal reaction first, because that is distortion. So you try to see, well, what is behind that? Is there something in me which calls this forth? Who knows? You see, that gives greatest advantages, keeps your mind absolutely detached, which is necessary for progress in sadhana, you see, from spiritual life. To understand what is behind them, why they happen, what is to be learned from them, what is in oneself which they are cast against. You see, there must be something that has called it forth. Yes. Well, it means self mastery over the vital movement, over anger, sensitiveness, pride, as well as desire and the rest. So, equanimity or equality, samatha, if you establish or try to establish, well, it's necessary for the foundation of which we are talking. Just as calm and peace is necessary, so is equality. A detached, you see, unmoved and quiet vital and mind, not touched and disturbed by what happens, what is said, what is done. Yeah. Equality means another thing, to have an equal view of man and to have an equal view of their nature and acts and forces that move them. Equality means that the same infinite is working in all. Therefore, you say that somebody did like that. Then you say the infinite acted in him like that. Because there is one, is it not? So that makes you samatha, that makes you equanimity. that, well, what is acting in you, the same is acting in there. And there it is acting in such a way as to give to your personality some unpleasantness, that's all. But then it is that which is acting. Well, you go to the basis of what is behind. So equality is not an untouched and unmoved vital and mind, but also it goes to the perception of one in all. Equality means also another thing, equal view of man and the nature and their act and the forces that move them. There can be no firm foundation in sadhana without equality or samatha. Whatever the unpleasantness of circumstances, however disagreeable the conduct of others, you must learn to receive them with a perfect calm and without any disturbing reaction. Lot of work to do throughout the day.
Throughout eternity, we'll stay there.
Huh?
Not throughout the day, throughout eternity.
I think so. There can be no firm foundation in sadhana without samatha, equality. Whatever the unpleasantness of circumstances, however disagreeable the conduct of others, you must learn to receive them with a perfect calm and without any disturbing reaction. And I will give one instance which is unforgettable. When he got the fracture of his femur, right leg, we were called, 4 or 5 of us, to assist in this setting it right, you see. And when it is set right, well, we are all time talking of sadhana, you see. So we asked him, how is that? Then he said, well, it has come as a test of samatha on the most material level of my consciousness. Here is somebody who breaks his leg, and you ask him seriously, and this is actually literally the thing he said. When I asked him, how is that? Oh, that has come perhaps as a test of samatha on the most material part of my consciousness, I think. And I think I pretty well succeeded in maintaining it. I asked, he said, yes, I was quite all right. He said, and that's where it is, you see. You have to do like that, and in an actual situation, not in the mind. Mind sometimes all right. Yes. And that gives us some idea of how far it can be. I give you another instance of 3 or 4 days the fellows went on preparing curry without salt. And he went on eating. He went on eating. And then didn't say, and after 3 or 4 days, there is no salt in curry today. He said, yes, there is no salt in curry. It never occurred to him that he must say this, why there is no, what are you fellows, 3 of you are doing, and what are you wasting? You go to play football, what is the wasting time here? You are not preparing things, nothing of the kind. Absolutely, absolute. When they said there is no, one of them said actually there is no salt. He said, yes, there is no salt. Complete samatha takes long to establish. It's not easy to establish. And it is dependent on 3 things: the soul's self giving to the divine by an inner surrender, the descent of the spiritual calm and peace from above, and the steady, long, and persistent rejection of all egoism, rajasic movements, and feelings that contradict equality. These 3, if there are, samatha is not difficult to establish. Takes long. And 3 things: soul, self giving to the divine by an inner surrender. So, when anything happens, you first surrender to the divine and say, well, I will do something, but it is for you to do something. You remain equal in temperament and offer to the divine, surrender to the divine. Second is the descent of spiritual calm and peace from above. to maintain the samatha. And steady, persistent rejection of all egoism, rajasic, immediately influence the instantaneous reaction of the vital part and other feeling that contradict samatha. It is they that come and break samatha. Personal feeling and personal egoism, personal like and dislike and preference and so. Equality does not mean inert acceptance of everything that happens. You don't accept. You are not moved, but you don't accept everything that happens. You see, it is not inert acceptance of everything that happens. Equality is founded on the sense of oneself in all and one divine everywhere, seeing the one in spite of all differences, degrees, disparities in its manifestation, and trying to, if you can, to know its will in all or in oneself to decide whether what happens is to be accepted or rejected, but on a basis of equality, samatha. When the rejection comes, it is not because you dislike, or because the divine will doesn't want it to be accepted. You see? That is the difference of between samatha and inert acceptance of whatever happens and say, well, this has happened. And so I accept it. No, in samatha you don't accept what happens, you detach yourself and remain unmoved and try to perceive what is behind that play. Not accept it. What is the force? How is it? Why is it come? To teach what? To give what? To do what? That's how you proceed, you see. And if there is an opening to the higher consciousness, then you aspire to the higher consciousness and find out what the higher consciousness indicates as a thing to be done. Either reject it or change it, or you see, what is the remedy with the divine suggests? Well, you act according to the inner guidance. I wanted to take up this part of yoga through works, but I think today we have already gone beyond the limit. So, work and yoga. Huh?
What was the third?
To reject all the time the disturbing elements in one's nature that come in the way of samatha. You see, egoism, rajasic reactions, likes and dislikes, and personal, elements. Persistent rejection of all egoism, rajasic, and the feeling that contradicts samatha. The connection of yoga and life, because that is also a very important part of his system of yoga. It refers to and accepts the whole of life as a field for growth and as a field for manifestation of the light when the light is attained. So that way it is a important part of his yoga.
Is that all from?
Yes, yes. No, it is all from Sharandam.
And the prayer of surrender, is that
Yes,
in the book?
yes, it is in the
In
yes. Tom, on yoga.
On yoga. Is that the synthesis then? Synthesis?
No, the other. Tom 1, Tom 2.
Tom one.
This is from Tom 1. On yoga. It is a big selection, and unless you take out what is pertinent, and it is from him. So you can have a very fine selection in that way.
You keep saying about the quiet mind, and yet you keep saying again that you have to do this and you have to do that. And you have to figure out.
Yes.
That's a sort of a contradiction.
No, it's not.
In my mind.
No, that is exactly what he said, that quiet mind is not a mind in which nothing happens.
But it's happening more.
No.
I mean, all of this that you're going to have to see, actually, is happening more.
Yes. And in a quiet mind, many more things will happen than disturbance. Many more things have to happen than disturbance. That's why quiet mind is necessary. You don't say that in quiet mind nothing will happen. No. In quiet mind, many things will have to happen. Only you have to know that no disturbance happens, because then what is to happen will not happen.
But then that makes I mean, that's why the
No,
mind really isn't quiet then.
no, mind is quiet. That is exactly what you have to understand. That mind is quiet, and it is on the quiet
Well,
mind
the
that
things that are happening is of mind too then.
no, it is on the base of quiet mind. What happens
Well, you're
is
talking of two different types of
no, no, no,
mind.
no, no. See, your mind is quiet. Then
You're talking of two different phases of mind.
no, mind is a present condition of mental consciousness of man. That is what you call mind. Generally, when loose talk, mind is they include emotion and vital and will and intelligence and all things in mind. It's a very rough way. But take mental consciousness of man. Now, in the mental consciousness, you include intellect, emotional being, and vital being mainly. Now, when peace or quiet is established in the mind, then mind is without disturbance, without its own proper movement, which makes it restless, open to all suggestions of physical life or vital being and so on. When that is avoided or thrown out or excluded, then a building of another consciousness takes place on the quiet mind without disturbing the quietness. In fact, quietness is necessary for building up. And then your mind does not become disturbed. It is some other consciousness which is working, another vibration which is working, which has nothing to do with your mind. You see?
Yeah, the thing that is quiet is the overmind then.
No, that which comes on the base of quiet mind is a higher consciousness. First power of the higher consciousness is quietness, which in mind becomes quiet mind. But really, it is a quality which imposes a want of disturbance on the whole being. It's a power of the supreme consciousness or higher consciousness. Peace is a power of the higher consciousness. Samatha is a power of the higher. That is exactly what people don't understand, and they confuse their own working with the higher working. That's why I made it very clear that you understand that the question is of establishing a new foundation of consciousness. And it is these elements that go to make the foundation. When the foundation is there, then the play of the higher consciousness will take place. That is to say, when the play of light or knowledge, will, harmony, delight, love, all will be able to play divine. All those elements, I am not telling the human idea, but the divine elements will play only when this basis is there. If the mind is not quiet, you cannot bear the power of the divine, for instance. It will upset completely. It is because when some you see you take this cup, now you exert a pressure upon it. Now it has a certain power of elasticity. If it is overpass, it will crack. So if the human being remains just as he is, no chance of his receiving anything. It is must change the foundation. Then changing of foundation, then widening, it's widening, it's widening, it's widening like that. So when mind receives something, the mental consciousness will gradually cease to be mental. Cease to be mental. Either it will ascend to the higher consciousness or will be conscious of the descent of the higher consciousness on its level. Then you say somebody else is standing on this floor and working. But you must give him a standing ground. If there is no quiet, he can't stand. You see, he must put his foot on. Where will he put his foot on if there is no quiet? See, that is the thing. Because when it is disturbed, then what comes gets mixed up with ideas, thoughts, current ideas, opinions, suggestions, desires, ambitions, all that. And quietness is there, one knows, oh, this is my old idea, and this is the higher, descent. You distinct. You can if the mind is not quiet, you can't distinguish. Really, it is a. It is not a question of acquiring conditions of mind, but it is transforming the present constitution of nature. Process is not merely doing something with the mind and you acquire a new quality in the mind. No, you change the foundation of present consciousness, make it possible to establish a new basis of human psychology. In fact, transformation. And it begins with the thin out of the wedge by establishing peace and quiet and first preliminaries of fearlessness and faith and surrender and aspiration, and that we have gone through before, you see, before. And then you change the foundation. And when the foundation is changed, then new consciousness comes and takes its place in place of the human personality, human mind, human emotion, and human vital being. Another power begins to play. To make the play possible, these conditions are necessary. The mental conditions or vital conditions, you see.
Would you say, Purani, that it's disturbance that you have a quiet mind?
Yes, yes, exactly. That is to say, there should be no play of the ego in it, you see. Whatever other comes is not coming down of anything which belongs to the human range, I mean. Supposing the higher consciousness comes down, then it will come out quite a different vibration. It will not be felt or known as something that belongs to the range of human, the range of mind. Certainly not. What will come will be the pressure of a higher consciousness. You will feel it like a pressure. Absolutely. It's a question of experience. You see, one has to have it and then one knows. Either it's a presence or it's a light or it's a pressure or it's a opening, it's a current, or you feel it in a thousand ways, you see. But you know that it is not now mind, but something else that is working.
And Sri Purani, I was walking down near the pasture and I looked up at the rock.
Yes.
And the thought came to me, this rock, if we build a sculpture, if we make a noble rock like this, we would have to build it up stone by stone.
Yeah.
Nature builds this rock out one sound,
yes.
and she builds it from above, coming down.
Yes.
Noiseless as Solomon's temple.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes, that is there is a perception of the universal energy at work, which is conscious. That is how you can perceive it in all things, you see. By slow practice, you can make your consciousness perceive the working of a conscious universal energy in everything. That universal movement and objects that you know are conscious. And that there is a conscious universal energy at work. People, when they talk as if this is unconscious, they don't know what they are talking, and they say, that is called ignorance. That is exactly ignorance. That is to be removed. This change of consciousness only can remedy that, you see. Then you remain in that condition from which the rock is prepared. The ray of light penetrates, you see, that is just coming down of the higher light. It is the light that is coming. It is the light of the higher consciousness. What you perceived was a ray that came down and showed to you that don't think this is inconscient. It's a work of a consciousness. And a universal energy that is at work which is conscious. Quite. That is a fact, really. And this, our notice, is a distortion of that fact. Mind notice a distortion. That is called ignorance. Ignorance is when knowledge comes, nothing is going to change externally, objectively. Yes, a revaluation, a complete revaluation. That's all. And that revaluation is so radical that we say it will transform man completely.